Welcome to the new session of Object-Oriented Programming using C++. The topic of the day is inheritance. Now, what is inheritance? Inheritance lets you create a new class by directly acquiring or inheriting the attributes and behavior of an existing class or classes, and then extending or adding features of its own. So, what is inheritance? If you have created a class, then you can create a new class by acquiring or inheriting all the features of the same class. Plus, you can also add new features to the newly created class. For example, if you have created a class named engine, if you have created a class named tire, if you have created a class named chassis, plus many more classes that are part or component of a car, then you can create a class like Maruti Ertiga. So you can use all those classes that you have already created to create a class named Maruti Ertiga. And then if you want, you can add more features to that class. Let us suppose that now you want to launch a new model. So you want to create a class for that car. You can use all the existing classes for that, just like you used it for the class Ertiga. So this is the benefit of inheritance. Once you create the classes, you can inherit them in a new class, use the pre-existing classes, and also add the new features to the new class. The existing class is called the base class. So that means the class which already exists is called the base class. And the newly created class, so which will use the base class, which will inherit the base class, is called the derived class. What are the key benefits of inheritance? Reusability of the already defined code in the base class. So like already stated, if we are able to use all the features of the base class, then we are improving the reusability. Reusability results into lesser cost in terms of money, effort, and the workforce required. It increases the reliability of the code. Now we are inheriting the code, or we are inheriting a class which is already tried and tested, and hence there is no need to worry about inheriting those features. There is no need to retest them. So it increases the reliability of the code. C++ also allows you to extend the features of the base class. Now when you create a new class, it is not just the collection of the already existing classes. Beside inheriting the features of the base class, you can also add new features to your class. So it gives an added benefit of inheritance. You are already aware of the two access specifiers that we use to define or prototype the various members of a class. One is called the private and the other one is called the public. Private members of a class cannot be accessed outside the class, and public members of a class can be accessed outside the class. Now, what about inheritance? If we have a base class and we are inheriting the features of the base class in a derived class, what will happen to the private members of the base class? Will we be able to access those private members inside the derived class? The answer is no. You cannot access the private members of the base class in the derived class. So how to overcome that problem? To overcome that problem, C++ provides you with an additional access specifier called the protected. Protected access specifier is a variation of the private. So that means the first thing it inherits from the private is that it cannot be accessed outside the class, but with a small change is that it can be accessed inside the derived class. So what is an protected access specifier? One that can be only accessed inside the derived class but not outside the derived class. So private members of a class cannot be accessed outside the class. While implementing inheritance, the private members of the class cannot be accessed in the derived class as well. So how to overcome that problem? You can use the third access specifier called the protected. So with the help of that, the private members of the derived class of the base class instead can be accessed inside the derived class. So how to make the private members accessible inside the derived class? Rather than making them private, make them protected. So private members which you want to be accessible in the derived class can be defined using the protected access specifier. Types of class derivations. So when you inherit a base class into a derived class, you can inherit the base class using one of the three modes. Either you can inherit the class using public mode, private mode, or protected mode. So what happens when you use either of the three modes with the access specifiers of the base class? If you use the public mode of class derivation, then the private members of the base class are not accessible inside the derived class. Protected members, they become the protected members of the derived class, and the public members become the public members of the derived class. Now, when we say that private members are not inherited, it does not mean that they are not created. By not inherited, the proper word to use would be that they are not accessible inside the derived class. They are inherited, they are created, but you cannot directly access them in the derived class. Now, what happens if you use the private mode of inheritance? The private members, again, they cannot be accessed directly in the derived class. The protected members of the base class becomes the private members of the derived class, and the public members of the base class also become the private members of the derived class. In the end, if you use the protected, the private members cannot be accessed directly, and the protected members become the protected of the derived, and public also become the protected members of the derived. So this is the impact of the three types of class derivations that you can use in C++ while inheriting the base class. How we define a derived class. So let us see what is the syntax to create a derived class. We know that to create or define a class, you simply start with the class keyword and then the name of the class followed by the body, and the body ends with a semicolon. So how do you actually inherit a base class? For that, the class header contains, first of all, the name of the class, the keyword class, and then the name of the derived class, followed by the colon operator, and then the list of classes that you want to inherit separated by comma. If there is only one class, then there is no need to use the comma operator. If there are multiple classes, then you have to separate them by the comma operator. So how do you define them? First of all, you give the visibility mode, whether you want to inherit the class publicly, privately, or protectedly, and then the name of the base class which you want to inherit. So here is a simple example of how you can inherit a base class, single base class. The name, first of all, you have to give the keyword class. Then you have to give the name of the derived class. In this case, the name of the derived class is class derived. And then you give the colon. How we are inheriting the base class? We are using the public mode of inheritance. Which class you want to inherit? You want to inherit the class base. Because in this example, we are inheriting only a single base class, we have not used the comma operator. And in case you want to inherit the class derived from two classes, then you have to add comma, and then you can again specify the mode in which you want to inherit, like public, and the name of the other class, like class base 1. So you can inherit two classes into a base class as well. So I hope the syntax is clear to you. Types of inheritance. How many types of inheritance we have? All of these types have not been discussed in this lecture. We are only going to discuss the basic inheritance in this lecture, but still we have 5 types of inheritance. One is called single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. Single inheritance is the most basic inheritance, in which there is one base class from which we have derived a single derived class. So there is one single base class and one derived class. So this is called the single inheritance. The example of single inheritance. So this is an example of the single inheritance. So first of all, you need to understand that you have a base class from which you are going to inherit the derived class. So where is the base class in this example? This is the base class. The name of the base class is student, and it has two members, roll number and name, and both of these members are protected. So in case any class derives this class or inherits this class, then both of these members will be directly accessible in that class. So now let us create a derived class. So this is the header of the derived class. The name of the derived class is marks, and it is inheriting the student class in the public mode. So within this class, we have created 1, 2, 3, and 4 private members. So this class has 4 members. But because it is inheriting the base class student, so it has 6 members: M1, M2, total, average, roll number, and name. So these 2 members will also be accessible in the derived class because they have been declared using the protected access specifier in the base class. So now you see that in the public, using the public access specifier, the get marks function has been defined. Using this get marks function, we are taking the input of the student's roll number and name. Student and roll number are not the direct members of the derived class, but these two are the data members of the base class which have been derived by the marks class. So you can directly access them. In addition to that, we are also taking the marks of the student in the subject M1 and M2. So how this eventually works out? This is the main function, the entry point of the program. The program starts its execution from here. The first line is marks object. So that means we are creating an object obj of the class marks. Now what will happen here? We will create an object of the class marks which will inherit the features of the class student as well. So how many data members will be created? 6 data members will be created. Memory for 6 data members will be created. 4 which belongs to marks and 2 belongs to the student. And then you call the get marks member function of the object class, which will call the get marks function as you can see here. So you will be able to take the input of the roll number, name, M1 and M2. This is not a complete program. You can add more functions to this, like computing the total and average and then displaying the marks to the students. You can also create the object array so that you can take the input of multiple students using that object array. So was an example of how we can create a single inheritance. Order of execution of constructor. Now you know that a constructor is a member function of a class that is automatically called when the object of that class is created. So in the last example, we did not create the constructors of both the base and the derived class, but in this example, we will see how the execution of these constructors take place. So this is the base class, as you can see, and this is the constructor of the base class. Similarly, you have the derived class right here, which publicly inherits the base class, and this is the constructor of the derived class. Now, what will happen if I create the object of the derived class? Now, when I create the object of the derived class, it is guaranteed that the constructor function of the derived class will be executed. But what will happen to the constructor of the base class? Will it be executed or not? If it will be executed, will it be executed before the constructor of the derived class or not? So read from here. The base class constructors are always called in the derived class constructors. So whenever you create the derived class object, first the base class constructor is executed and then the derived class constructor is executed. So it means clearly that the constructor of both the base and the derived class will be executed. The constructor of the base class will be executed first, and then the constructor of the derived class will be executed. Order of execution of destructor. So similar to the constructors, we will also see how the destructors are called when you use the concept of inheritance. So here you can see this is the base class. This is the constructor of the base class, and this is the destructor of the base class. How you know that this is the destructor? Because this is the tilde sign that have been used in front of the name of the class, which indicates that this is a destructor. So we have created a base class in which we have created a constructor of the base class and destructor of the base class. So next we have created a derived class right here. It publicly inherits the base class. Again, this class also has a constructor and a destructor. Now, what will happen if we create the object of the derived class? And what will happen when the object of the derived class will be destroyed? Now, when you create the object of the derived class, the constructor of the base class will be executed first. So what will be the first line to be displayed in the output screen? The output screen will say base class constructor, and then the constructor of the derived class will be called. And what will be the second line of output on the screen? Derived class constructor. And when the object of the derived class will be destroyed, the calling of the destructors will happen in the reverse order. That means, first of all, the destructor of the derived class will be called. So what will be the output on the screen? Derived class destructor. And then the destructor of the base class will be called, and the screen output on the screen will be base class destructor. So what we have learned in this lecture so far is that if you use inheritance, then the constructor of the base class is called first, and then the constructor of the derived class. And in case of destructor, the destructor of the derived class is called first, and then the destructor of the base class. Parameterized constructors with inheritance. The constructors that we have seen so far, the arguments were not passed. Now what happens when we pass arguments, or we want to pass argument to the constructor of the base class? That is the idea of this section now. So here you can see that you have created the base class. There is one constructor that has been defined for this base class, and it accepts a single argument a1. So this is a parameterized constructor because it is accepting an argument. So here you can see that you have defined a derived class which publicly inherits the base class. Now this is the definition of the constructor of the derived class. How many arguments is the constructor of the derived class accepting? The constructor of the derived class is accepting two arguments. The first argument is A1 and the second argument is B1. But interestingly, after these two arguments, we have used a colon operator and then we have written base of A1, which means that the constructor of the derived class will accept two arguments and then pass the first argument to the constructor of the base class. Now let's have a look at this statement inside the main function. Now this statement is used to create the object obj of the class derived. So when the object of the derived class will be called, these two parameters will be passed, 10 and 20. Now 10 will be assigned to A1 and 20 will be assigned to B1, of which A1 is equal to 10 will be passed as argument to the constructor of the base class. So this will become 10 here and B1 becomes 20 here. So what will be the final value of the data member A, which belongs to the base class? It will become 10. And what will happen, or what value will be assigned to B, which belongs to the derived class? The value of B is equals to B1, which becomes 20. So what we have seen in this section is how we can accept the parameters to the constructor of the derived class and how we can pass the arguments from the derived class constructor to the constructor of the base class. I hope that this concept is clear to you and you can use this concept in your programs. Function overriding. You have already must have done function overloading. Now we are going to do the concept of function overriding. Function overriding basically means creating two functions or defining two functions with the same prototype, one in the base class and one in the derived class. Now what is the same prototype? Means they have the same return type, same name and same argument list. If you have two functions like this, one in the base class and one in the derived class, then that is called function overriding. So let's see the concept of function overriding in this particular program. As you can see in the base class, definition of the base class, here is the definition of the base class. We have created or defined a function named display. The return type of the display function is void and no arguments have been passed to the display function. Now here is the definition of the derived class, which publicly inherits the base class. Here again we have defined a function named display, which has the return type void and the name of the function is display and does not accept the argument. So here you can see that these two definitions of two different functions, one in the base class and one in the derived class, are absolutely same. So this is called the concept of function overriding, because we have created two functions with absolutely same prototype, one in the base class and one in the derived class. Now the major question is, what happens when we place a call to the member function, overridden member function, from the object of the derived class? As you can see here in the coding of the main function, we have created the object of the derived class using this statement. And then we have called the member function display. Now which member function will be called? Because we have two member functions, in the one in the derived class and one in the base class. So which member function will be called when we call the display function? The answer to this question is that when we call a overridden member function from the object of the derived class, then the member function of the derived class is executed. So the output on the screen will be derived class always. So how can I call the overridden member function of the base class? So you can call the overridden member function of the base class using this syntax. What does it say? Before the name of the function, we are giving the name of the class, base class, and then the scope resolution operator. Please have a look at it again. So how to call the overridden member function of the base class? First of all, write the name of the object of the derived class, then the dot operator. Then do not write the name of the member function directly. First of all, write the name of the base class and then use the scope resolution operator. And then write the name of the function that you want to call. So when you use the scope resolution operator with the base class, then the call is actually placed to the overridden member function of the base class. I hope this concept is also clear to you. Please try these concepts in the lab so that the things become more clearer to you. The other types of the inheritance and their programs are discussed in the next lecture. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and as suggested, please try these programs in the lab. Thank you.